Hey, folks, this is Jim Horn with Black and White Photography. And today I am happy to have on our show Ms. Margaret Block West. She's a photographer that I found in Black and White magazine, and I'm really anxious to talk to her about her photography, her work, her philosophy of photography, etc. So here we go, folks. Margaret Block West. Hey, Margaret, how are you doing, young lady? This is, Margaret is in Nebraska. I'm in Traverse City, Michigan, and we're both in cold climates. A little bit tough to photograph right now, Margaret, I would imagine.
Well, it's just a little dull and gray here, but I just came back from Norway about a week ago, so that was fun.
Oh, super. And how long were you in Norway?
About a week. It would be nice to go for longer, but I do have a day job, so...
And were you photographing when you were in Norway?
Yeah, it was just solely for photography.
Oh, those are phenomenal trips. When I even go out and shoot here, I find that photography, at least for me, is sort of a meditative experience because you've just got to think about taking the photograph, right?
Oh, yeah, it totally clears your mind. And because I do travel to do it, I get to see other cultures and just different geography. And I just love making something that at least I think is beautiful. So
I think when we get to the photographs, I think the people will see that these are really good photographs. I was explaining to Margaret before we started the show that it's always a little bit difficult to get people on the show that aren't necessarily air quote professional photographers, and quite frankly, there's such great work out there by people that aren't professional like Margaret, and it's just a thrill to take a look and see what they're doing. So, Margaret, a little bit of history. How long have you been doing photographs?
So I've done photography almost my whole life, but I didn't actually start concentrating on it till about 2017. So there were many years I didn't even have a camera, but when I was 14, I actually got an honorable mention for a photograph I took of my sister. So, I mean, I clearly have been doing it for a long time, and that was back on film photography. But for years, I didn't have a camera. In 2017, I went to Zapata. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's, I guess you could kind of call it a resort, but it's a ranch that the Nature Conservancy owns, which is, I think, the only, if you want to call it, resort type area that they own in the country. And there's a lot of bison there, and just it's a beautiful setting. It's right near the Sand Dune National Monument Park. Uh-huh. But I went there for the week of photography. And honestly, I really didn't know that much about photography other than I like to take pictures. I had never heard of raw photography, the raw files, for instance. I mean, it was just an eye-opener. The person who runs the week is actually head of the engineering school at Colorado University, but he does a lot of photography as an amateur. And he, after that week, it was just like, I just was in love and just had to keep going. So, of course, I only shoot raw now, and I've learned a tremendous amount. I am pretty much self-taught. I mean, I go on workshops in other countries, and of course, I do a lot of photography on my own. But I have never gone to college for photography. I've taken a few classes. I took a macro course with Don Kamarechki, if I said his name right. He's quite well known for his macro work, and he lives in Bulgaria, but he teaches a macro course online. So you can, right, with Zoom, you can take a class with someone who lives somewhere else, right? And that was a great course because, it gets a little dull here in the winter. So I do macro. I have a little studio set up so I can do some flower work and things like that in the winter when I can't go out and do a lot of landscapes, because I do love landscape photography. That's my specialty.
I think your journey through photography is extremely typical, or not extremely, but it's typical. People pick up the camera, they say, God, I really like doing this. I like taking the photographs, and they work around all the technical stuff, and it's a little bit easier today than it was back in the old film days.
Yeah.
And so for the geeks out there on equipment, I'm not an equipment geek necessarily, but my wife would say I probably am. But more importantly, what kind of camera do you use now?
I use a Canon R5.
Okay.
And I have a wide variety of lenses.
Okay. So. Yeah, they say you rent the camera, but you buy the lenses or something like that, because people change the cameras out quite frequently, but the lenses they hang on to. Anyway, why don't we start and take a look at some of these wonderful photographs that Margaret sent in. And I've got no particular order here, but let's take a look, Margaret. Hang on. I'll tell you, when I looked at this, the first thing that came to my mind, and what we're looking at, people, is this looks like a picture. It's I don't know whether the gentleman is a farmer, but it looks like it's right out of the 1930 Depression photographs. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this photograph, Margaret, and where it was and so forth?
Sure. So I went to Cuba about a year ago, and that was quite an experience. I do a lot of landscape photography, but there wasn't quite as much landscape to photograph there. I mean, a lot of it was in the cities, and we did go to farms. And we had just eaten lunch at a farm, and were about to leave. And this gentleman was just walking along the farm. He just works there. Very thin, I mean, almost cachectic. And he was nice enough to let me take his photo. And, just the expression in his skin, in his face, I would say he appeared a little tired. He appears a little tired in the photo, and he appeared a little tired in real life. Didn't look like he ate all that great. I mean, the life is pretty hard for Cubans in general, and probably being on the farm is even harder. So that's kind of his story.
Yeah, you really captured that. I mean, it does. I didn't know he was from Cuba, obviously, but it did harken back to the days during the Depression when things were pretty tough for farmers and so forth and so on. It's a beautiful photo. I mean, she's done such a great job with the wrinkles and the face. You just and the veins in the neck. It's really draws you right. And then he's looking at you, and it just draws you right in. That's phenomenal. Okay. We're coming to some of your landscapes now. Why don't you talk about now? These are obviously looks like pine trees. I'm not a big tree guy that I know what kind, but this is okay. There's a lot of emotions when you look at a photograph with the trees and the fog and so forth. And where was this shot taken?
So I took that last June in Slovenia. And the reason I went to Slovenia was really because of the fog. I mean, you have a pretty good chance of hitting fog there. And I called this photograph Solitude because that light just kind of singled out that single tree. It was taken with a long lens. Honestly, I don't remember if I took it with my 200 millimeter or if it was more like 400 millimeters. I can't remember. And, everybody's had that experience of maybe being in a crowd, but feeling all alone. And to me, it just kind of brings out that feeling. Here's this tree just kind of being lit up by itself.
Yeah, it really does. There's the tree in the center is right. It makes you just, that solitude is just a perfect title for it. Yeah. And so you went to Slovenia because of the fog.
Yes, I really did.
Holy cow.
Lots of nice fog pictures.
That's a devoted photographer. They've actually taken a look at the landscape and what they can photograph there. That's great. Hang in there. Okay. Oh, Now, now this has to be a safari, but I haven't seen an elephant pics like this. Why don't you describe it? Yeah, let's talk about this because it almost looks threatening. I mean, it looks like bearing down on us.
Right. So I've been to Africa 3 times. This was my third trip to Kenya. This is my third trip to Africa, my first trip to Kenya. And we were fortunate enough to be with a guide that we got out of the car and I was actually on my stomach taking this photo shooting upwards, which created a very different feeling than when you're more at eye level with them. It happened to be a very severe drought when we went. I think we were there in September and they get May rains and they didn't get their rains. And I think when we arrived, 8 elephants had already died from the drought. You can just see all the dust. I'm sure it gets dusty there anyway, but they were really hurting for water this summer. And it was a great trip. And I think it shows the elephants how majestic and large they are.
Oh yeah, I mean but the angle of the shot, you laying on the ground, did you ever feel threatened by the elephants when, you were in that,
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
So, the guide had us lay so that if the elephant would get upset and charge, hopefully he wouldn't, we could roll under the back bumper, so to speak, of the vehicle. Honestly, I don't know if an elephant attacked your car, you can roll the car. So I don't know if that would have really protected us, but but we felt a little safer. Right. We felt a little safer knowing we could just roll out of the way, but we didn't have to. The elephants didn't try to do anything.
Well, you've really, you've captured the skin of the elephant. I mean, you can see the wrinkles in the skin and the eyes are, I feel like the eyes are just, from this first elephant with these long tusks are just looking at you. And then you were able to capture him kicking the ground. That's it's a great shot, great action shot. Do you normally photograph in black and white? Primarily because it was a black and white magazine where I first saw you work, or do you work in color too sometimes?
So I actually shoot in color because I can convert it to black and white. It seems to me if you shoot in black and white, you have the disadvantage you probably can't convert it back very well.
Yeah,
okay. Right. But I love black and white, but I do shoot in color.
Well, I can tell on this next shot you certainly love black. You got to tell us where this is at. What it is to me, it looks like a desert shot. That's what it looks like, or could be snow. But it is the sunlight coming through there. Tell us about this.
So this is White Sands in New Mexico. I don't know. Have you been there?
Yes, I have a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah. So the original was in color and it's a little bit of a unique shot. I was with a couple other people and nobody decided to shoot into the sun the way I did. And it's not that easy with such a high dynamic range. But I just love the sun's rays. I mean, just light fascinates me anyway. And then I converted it into black and white and I thought it made it more striking.
Yeah, it really does. As I said, I've been there a couple of times and typically the shots I've seen there are, the shadows and, in the sun, the comparison between the dark shadow and the white sand and so forth. But I haven't seen anything like this using the sun as it's a very unusual shot. How long were you in White Sands?
I've got the other shots too. Just 3 days, I think. Okay,
super. Yeah. It's a beautiful shot, folks. Well, okay. Well, Margaret, I certainly, I hope, by showing your photographs, other photographers, want to come on the show and talk about their work. When are you going to start working on your photographs from Norway?
Oh, I've started to work on them already.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I like them. There's a lot of water views. I mean, I got down really low and the water just looks in the photos like it's going to crash over the viewer. It's pretty cool.
Now, did you go with a workshop group, or did you just go by yourself, or?
No, I went with a workshop group. I've done a few workshops with somebody who's out of Seattle actually, and he had a little trip to Lofoten. It wasn't that easy to get there. We were a day late. I took 4 planes to get there, and the last plane didn't quite make it there on time, but it was a great trip. We didn't really see much aurora, nothing to photograph. I saw the aurora, but it was cloudy and things like that. But the conditions were great for ocean views. And then there's a lot of beaches with like black sand mixed with white. So you get all these patterns. Just very, very striking.
And the one thing that as we talked about your work, I think what a lot of photographers don't do sometimes, they don't sort of research, the area they're going to, and consequently they come back with, just sort of a jumble. But I think, photographers listening to this podcast are going to realize that it is important to go there with something in mind. Slovenia and fog. Now, who would?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Huh? Who would have thunk that? And so I think that's a great way to, because then you don't become disappointed. You know what you want to shoot. You know where you're going to be, and you come back with the photographs that you want. Well, Margaret, I really appreciate you being on the podcast, and it's great having you. And listen, I wish you a lot of success with your Norwegian photographs, and hopefully we'll see more of them in the black and white magazine. And hopefully, when I reach out to you, you'll come back and show us some of the other artwork that you're doing.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was fun.
Oh, it's really great having you. Thank you.
Thank you.